Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sunspot Live. I'm Scott Brooks. As I tell you every time we have a show, I'm very happy to be your host, and I'm happy that you are here. We have a wonderful guest today, one that I enjoy talking with both online and offline, and I think you will enjoy. I'll introduce him in just a minute, but a couple of things I want to tell you. We do this because we are determined to be a beast for good in our community as we watch the world news, national news, state news. You can tell how, I think, rougher is putting it mildly, it's getting today. And not enough people are willing to stand up and be a beast for good. So that's why we do this show. And as I mentioned to you before, we're evolving. So we have increased viewership, increased questions and comments and concerns. I get them throughout the week, my emails. And because of that, we want to make this better. So we'll be announcing some new, fun, cool things coming up in the next few weeks that will launch in mid-June, almost at January. And also today we are giving away, no, not today, but Thursday. I want to announce today that we're giving away our final 6 tickets to Scarborough Fair, which will end Memorial Day weekend. So there's about 3 or 4 weekends left. Well, 3 weekends after this past weekend. So the rest of the month we have those tickets, but our last 6. So we'll be telling you how to sign up and be eligible to win those, but we'll be giving them away on our show on Thursday. So with that said, today we have Patrick Souter, member of Waxahachie City Council for 2 years now, and just you will run unopposed this time.
That's
so
correct.
For 2 more years. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
I love, as I mentioned, I love conversations with Patrick, and really in terms of being a council person, he's what I hoped we could find and will continue to find out there, because we need folks who are open, transparent, honest, ethical, all that stuff. Patrick represents. So I'm very happy about that. The only problem is that, as you can see on your screen, there's a whatever you want, a hideous looking thing on my table here. It says BU.
Well, my first official comment, sick 'em bears.
So we got sick 'em bears and roll tide today. And one of our first commenters is your lovely bride, says, "Hi, honey bear." Ooh.
Oh, gosh.
Anything else you want to tell us, Lori, that we can boo-boo? Anyway, thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, so we're just going to talk. We don't really have an agenda when I have these council members on, because there's just a lot for us to talk about, and I like to go where the conversation goes. So congratulations on your win.
Thank you very much.
Were you surprised that you were unopposed?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
I expected somebody to file. I hope that was some type of validation that I'm actually doing a good job.
Yeah, sure.
But no, I was of course pleased. You always want to be unopposed, but
Right.
always welcome. I still campaigned like I did.
Right.
I was out at the polls, putting out signs and talking to people. So, really I used it as an opportunity to be out there for people to actually have a chance to talk to me, put a face with the name.
Right.
And I felt that it was very important as being a public servant that you
Yeah.
do that, even if you're running unopposed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea, particularly when you just said that you could talk to people and meet new people, that sort of thing, and that's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
I know I would be tempted after having labored through 2 years of being on city council, which is not easy and can be time-consuming and laborious. You run unopposed and you say, "Phew, I don't have to spend all the money. I can nap here and there," in terms of a campaign. You chose not to do that, and there's a lot admirable about that, because I think the average unopposed candidate, it's fair to say, they don't do that, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's there's something in that for all of us to learn. So,
Well, and I'll even tell you, people were surprised that I was doing it. I was
Yeah.
like, I need to go pick up my new son. Well, why are you doing that? I said, I'm still, have to be out there front and center.
That's important, and I appreciate you doing that. So we are about to, I don't want to start with this, so we'll come back to it, but you all should know that next Tuesday, the 14th, has it been announced what time?
12 o'clock.
Noon?
Yes, sir.
Noon is it at
It's going to
at
be
the convention center?
Yes.
Yeah. So right now, because of the new facility we have downtown and the old city hall is being renovated, council meets out at the Civic Center. Is there a room? Is it? I know they have those names. Of
Yeah,
rooms.
I can't remember which one it is.
Signs point you to it.
If you're on the hotel side of the convention center,
Yeah.
it's not the main entrance. It's the one that's just down to the
Okay,
left.
right.
But on that Hampton Inn side.
Okay, yeah. So that's where council meets for its council meetings, and which y'all just had last night. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But next Tuesday is the important meeting where, after every election, what do you guys do?
So what we get the official tally in, or it's unofficial. We do what is called canvassing, where they will read to us the results that are provided to us from the election office, and then we accept those. And at that point, our new council member, Trace Atkins, will actually be a member on the council.
He'll be sworn in at that time.
Correct.
Right? Yeah, right.
And then now that we have that he's on there, we have 5. We will go through the process of electing the mayor and mayor pro tem.
And I've talked about this system. I don't know. I think I have a sense of how you feel about it, but the system enables or allows or compels, provokes, whatever mandates that this take place. The canvassing is normal for all
Correct.
bodies. But with respect to how we choose a mayor, we really don't choose a mayor. You guys choose a mayor and a mayor pro tem. But because of the system, it can change. Those two people, those two seats can change people, or however you want to say it, every single year.
Right, because we have to reconstitute the with the council. We have to canvass. So next year we'll have to canvass the vote, and we'll go through the same process.
Yeah, it doesn't speak much to the value of continuity. Although
true.
a mayor here is no more or less than any other council member, other than being the face of the city, so to speak, which is important. But the idea of continuity kind of is not thrown out the window, but it doesn't lend itself to continuity with a mayor and a mayor pro tem that maybe have worked together on a specific project or whatever. That can, with this process, that doesn't necessarily get totally blown up, but in terms of their roles and their unique relationship, I mean, because you guys vote on both, right? So the mayor can't choose the pro tem, but a mayor and a mayor pro tem do develop a special kind of relationship over the course of their terms, I would think.
No, that's true. But the good thing is with our council, if you really look back over the past 2 years I've been on council, the extreme vast majority of the time we've voted all to approve or disapprove something.
Right.
And so we have a good working relationship. But yeah, you're right. I mean, when it comes down to such things as filling the boards and commissions, that I want to be sure to talk about and tell people how they can go about getting on boards and commissions.
Right.
All of us will go through the applications and say, we think that this person would be good on the Parks Board or the Planning and Zoning. And those will go to the mayor and the mayor pro tem, and then they'll decide. And generally, they follow it, but they do have a little bit of influence on that.
Right.
But it's nothing more, because they may have to look at 2 people that are perfectly qualified and make that decision. So, but you do want a good working relationship with your mayor and your mayor pro tem.
For sure. So I skipped over the part where I wanted you to tell us a little bit about you. So let's go back to that. So tell us about Patrick Souter and what you do for your day job.
Okay.
And you can skip over the Baylor stuff. I know all that. But
No,
anyway, no.
I do plan to highlight that. But first and foremost, I'm a practicing lawyer with a regional law firm, Gray Reed, that's based in Dallas, Houston, and in Waco. And so with that, I'm a transactional regulatory attorney. That anything in that world that deals with doctors, hospitals, different types of providers, anybody that's providing healthcare services, I represent them, because it's a different type of skill, understanding what's coming out of Washington, D.C. and Austin, Texas, as they relate to changing our rules. So that's my first primary job. Again, Baylor. I'm the adjunct professor in charge of healthcare studies at Baylor, run their healthcare program. I have a family ranch. Serve on lots of boards and commissions and things like that, feeling that. So it's just really anything that comes my way, I enjoy doing.
Married to a lovely lady.
She's the love of my life, and she puts up with me, and God bless her for doing so.
She calls you Honey Bear. What do you call her? Next topic. So this is a general question looking for a kind of a, well, obviously a specific answer because it relates to you, but you started out 2 years ago.
Yes.
And after 2 years, if you could be pinpointed to say, these are the two biggest things I've learned that I didn't really expect, what would they be, or category of information? What is it you've learned being on council for 2 years? So
it's really one of these things that it takes a lot more time than you think that it does. And when we get a council agenda, and there'll be different things on there on a particular city project or planning and zoning or whatever, I will take the time to digest all of that, and it's usually about 150 pages per council session. And I will go out and I will look at the topic, and I'll ask our city staff, or I'll ask some neighbors if I'm out there and they see me, and they, what are you doing out here? And I tell them. So I knew that it was going to take a lot of effort, but to effectively do the job, you have to be committed to doing the job rather than just relying upon what you get on a Friday afternoon in preparation for a Monday meeting. So maybe that's not necessarily a surprise, but the amount that's there. The second part that really surprised me is that a lot of our citizens don't take advantage of getting information. So with that, then I have to make sure that information is out there. Even coming down to the fact that if we're having a council meeting, I will explain, this is what this means, or here's the legal aspects of it. The lawyer comes out into me because I want those folks that they're either before us in the meeting room or watching live or recorded, that I want them to understand the way I think about something and the implications of it. So it's really a way to educate. And not to sound that, people don't understand it, but I just want them to know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I've said to many city council members and a number of people in the community that when we see our city council have interaction and discourse and talk, that's important. For me, that I don't get much out of a council that goes through its meetings and not much is said. I mean, because some of it is legalese. When planning department has to, they follow their own vernaculars with certain things. So when I do, like last night, when I wasn't there, but I watch it every Tuesday morning of the Monday night that y'all have a meeting. I learned something by the discourse, whether it's
no doubt about it.
And you tend to be somebody who provides more discourse than maybe some of the others. But I think that's healthy and it's important. There are some councils in America, as you know, that go berserk with discourse. It's ugly and it's not productive. So, having the right balance is important. But is that how you are in pretty much every part of your life? I mean, are you opinionated or would you characterize it a different way?
Now, my wife may say something here, but I guess you could say I'm opinionated. But I'm not trying to impose my opinion on somebody. I treat city council like I treat my law practice. I have to tell my client, here are the repercussions of what you do. Here are the advantages of what you do. This is the way I get to that point. if you want to know my opinion, I'll tell it to you. But that's just one part of whether it's a client, whether it's a citizen, whomever it would be, for them to understand where I'm coming from.
Right.
And to create, discourse sometimes could be good as long as people do it in a respectful manner.
Right.
When they don't, then it just all breaks down.
Yeah, one of the more, I'm almost 63 years old, and I love TikTok, which I probably shouldn't be proud of that. Probably shouldn't even say it, but I do. It's the only social media that I find entertaining and worth the silly time that I give it. But one of the things I've watched before is the city council in Flint, Michigan. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yes. Yes.
It's entertaining in the wrong way or for the wrong reasons, but that is an example of how opinions and what you're talking about it being disrespectful and getting just overblown, it becomes a clown show, really.
It really does.
And it almost happens in every one of their city council meetings.
And let me add something here.
Sure.
Really, since we had to move over to the Civic Center for our meetings, we used to have briefings the hour before council, where what would be presented out in the council is presented to us, and it allows us to have the opportunity to ask questions of city staff or whomever it is that's there.
Right.
And I think it's more important than ever that since we don't have that, and really the presentation from city staff occurs in the council meeting, I think it's the duty of the council members to ask those same questions that you would have asked in the back in the conference room, and because rarely did anybody show up for the briefings.
Right.
Well, they're out there now, and it's being recorded, and they're going to know if you're asking questions or what your approach is on maybe deciding an issue. So that's the reason why I said discourse can be good as long as it's adds to the. Yeah,
I agree. There's a contributing element to the discourse.
Exactly.
I can't remember why what were they called, sessions before at 6:15? What'd y'all call them?
The briefing sessions.
Yeah, the briefing. Why did they go away?
There were a couple of folks that thought that it would be more beneficial for actually us to have that discussion out in front of everybody. And you can't really argue with that if people weren't coming at 6. I mean, they have to get home,
right?
Fix dinner or, do something with the kids, and they just couldn't get there. So it was really a way to pull that out so the folks could hear it.
Well,
so we stopped it, and then we moved, and we just kept going in that direction.
Does the same level of discourse in the council meetings now compared to the briefing discourse? It's interesting. People will say, well, we don't need these. We can just do it in council. What they really may be saying is, I don't really want to say a lot, or I don't want to be on record for a lot. And so they may have said a lot in the briefings, got rid of them, and then not say anything in council.
I would say that it's just a little bit that it's decreased.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay. Let's see. Connect the Dots says, hi, Sunners. We're called Sunners. I like that. Rand G Generation says, hi, Scott and Patrick. Zar Husar says, I feel like education on how this all works becomes increasingly needed in our country. Thank you both. Well, you're welcome. But the idea, it used to be before I even knew who you were, when council, 8-10 years ago, people used to say, the city isn't transparent. And you probably heard that since you've been on council.
Oh, yeah.
Or the council isn't transparent. When in truth, at least in my travels across the country in different cities, this council and this city is more transparent than most. You can get the budget online. You can reach you guys anytime, pretty much. And there's a whole lot of other things. You guys post things on social media. So there's a lot of openness. We just, it's one thing to say, well, I'm going to shut my eyes and not be able to see anything, and then say that the city isn't transparent. Well, that's not fair.
Well, and I beg people to reach out to me or to come to, a planning and zoning meeting or a Keep Waxahachie Beautiful meeting. And when people, when the citizens do show up, I always thank them for showing up. But yeah, I think we had people going out into the hallway last night.
Did you?
And I wanted to say, because we have at the very end, everybody has the opportunity that's on council to make a public comment. And, I'm always, hey, we're here we work for y'all. And I'm glad everybody was here to express their opinion, whether they're doing it verbally or they're just there and you know why they're there.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. Last night, when I watch it, you can't, as you've seen before, because you've seen what it looks like when you watch it. You can't see how many people are in attendance.
Right.
So it's good to know that there were a lot of people there. There was a reason for that because of one of the topics. Before we get to that, I going back to what you learned about the real commitment that it takes, because council doesn't care if you're gonna the way that's structured. All councils doesn't accommodate somebody's workload, their personal life, their day job. It is what it is, right? So you have to, as a council person, you have to be pliable enough to make sure that you fulfill the duty that you said you were going to fulfill while also fulfilling your other obligations.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about you really understanding that better as a result of being on council, is it, I don't know if you could pinpoint an exact number of hours, that probably wouldn't be fair, but is it a full-time job to be a city council member on Waxahachie City Council? And I'm talking about full-time job in the context of what we know full-time jobs to be, 40 hours or what have you.
It could be. It's not really.
Okay.
But you look at it. So I will tell you, the first week of the month, all of our boards and commissions have a council liaison, a council member that is assigned to that board or commission to be able to assist the board in their process. So the first week of the month, we'll have a council meeting on Monday. I will have I'm a city cemetery board liaison. That's Thursday morning. I always go to the parks meeting. That's Thursday afternoon. If I can make it to airport, or late afternoon. Airport is on Thursday. I'm also council liaison for the Waxahachie Housing Authority. It could be that week. So, to go to all of that and to prep, if you look at it, it could be 30, 40 hours by the time you adequately get yourself prepared and attend.
And that doesn't take into consideration the number of people who reach out to you any given day at any given time. You're also involved in historic preservation, right?
Very much so.
Now, are you a liaison?
So I'm the liaison for the Historical Preservation Commission, or HPC.
Right.
I'm also a vice president and board member for Historic Waxahachie.
Yeah, that's right.
And maintaining the history here is something that is first and foremost. We have such a great, I call it a town. We're almost 50,000. I think that means it's a city. But
yes, it is.
I call it a town because of the fact that you still get people that you see out all the time, different places, and you want to preserve what we had. And, if you looked at my campaign sign from 22 and from now, it says preserve and improve. It's preserve our historical aspects, but improve upon it and anything new coming in.
Right. Yeah. So last night, the biggest topic, it seemed last night, was the bakery, and I don't have all the specifics, and not that unless you want to share the details, we don't have to. But the idea of a bakery opening up in a historic part of town, and I may not be saying it right, but you'll get the idea. It threatens people for a lot of reasons. One of which is because they don't want to, and you heard it last night, they don't want to lose the historic charm. I think those words were used by more than one person, that Waxahachie offers.
Right.
And so it becomes a real battle. Before we get to the specifics of the things I think we can drill down into, what motivated you to run for city council in the first place? Because sometimes I look at you guys and I'm saying, you guys lost your bloody minds because of all the things you have to deal with. It's one thing to not have a full-time job. It's still a lot when you don't have a full-time job. But to have a full-time job and do it, really, I mean, there's something in you that compelled you to do it. What was that?
So my family is one with a public service background.
Okay.
My father was a police officer in the Dallas Police Department for 39 years, and at the same time went in and out of regular Army and Reserve. And my mother was the PTA president, and I was raised with this idea that your community is only as good as those that put the time in.
Yeah.
And so my family's had a family farm in Ellis County since before I was born. And when I had been a lot of folks characterized me almost like a carpetbagger when I was running, because we had moved down.
I remember.
And we had moved down from Dallas, and my wife always wanted a historic home. She had been working down here for years, but I can remember being a toddler crawling on the grass at our historic courthouse here.
Right.
So it's been part of Ellis County, and Waxahachie has been part of it. So when I came down here, I thought I could make a difference. And that's the reason why I ran. And I consulted with Lori, and I prayed on it, and I said, okay, I think that this is the time to do it. And that's the reason why I did it.
Yeah. And you're glad you did.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I want to talk about there are some big issues going on in Waxahachie, some that are similar to other parts of the country. Let's start with short-term rentals.
Okay.
Which I think every salesperson, every council person I've had on here, we've talked about that. So from a general standpoint, again, short-term rentals are Airbnbs, Verbos, things like that. And we have I'm not going to refer to it as a problem. I'm going to refer to it as a challenge. We have a significant enough of them in town to make it a challenge. Fair to say?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So just from your perspective and yours alone, where do you stand on short-term rentals, and include the benefit, what you see, if you see any, the benefits of having them, or it was Plano just voted to have them no more. We're done. So where do you stand on that issue?
So I'm not necessarily opposed for short-term rentals. There's places in town with the ordinance that we passed, such as the central area, that it's fair game, but that's a commercial area. That's an area where you have visitors coming in and and the like. When we originally came through, we created a moratorium. And if you go back in time, all of this really resulted based upon one house out at the lake that was a party house for, and for example, you talked about the time commitment. Well, the folks out there were telling me that, at midnight, it's going crazy. So I would drive out to the lake at midnight, 1 a.m. to see what it was, and I saw it firsthand. So, when you're doing this, you have to balance people's property rights. And I was, I take it that, yes, you can utilize your property as long as it doesn't impinge upon your next door neighbor or your person, because they have the same property rights. So when we were crafting the ordinance, we had it that if you were already operating a short-term rental, essentially it was file your application, pay your application fee, and you pretty much would get to keep it. Now, we qualified that by, if you subsequently sold it to somebody else, then in residential areas you would not, they would be prohibited.
Right.
But that's where you had, single family residences. But we weren't trying to keep anybody from doing it, and I understand it, but we were just trying to limit it. And I got a lot of grief from that. And I'm like, maybe there's a happy medium, and I think we got there. But also with that, so we have an SUP process now. File your application, be granted an SUP, But if you then sold the property, you would have to go through the SUP process.
So once an STR, not always an STR.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But I did want to, because there were neighbors that they were adamantly opposed to it. You get the comments. I did not want to live next to a hotel.
Yeah.
I did not want to live next to X. And so I was just trying to balance those rights between those that have the property and those that were opposing it. So if you look at our votes, we approved, I think, 3 or 4 last night.
Yeah.
So we're probably 2/3 of those that have
Approved.
come before council have been
Yeah.
approved, and the ones that were not approved, there was a reason. They didn't follow the rules. My opinion is, and I said this at the very first council meeting where we were approving them, if the vast majority of the neighbors do not want them, then I will vote not to approve it. Everybody else can approve it.
Right.
But I'm looking at, so the first time we had like 20 some odd, 18 some odd, and another 20 some. There were 3 properties. And those neighbors came out and said, I do not want them.
Right.
And I'm trying to listen to those people.
Yeah.
And maybe it's incumbent upon the property owner. So we had a lady last night that's had a house here. She lived here for years. She moved away, but she comes
The one that
back.
moved to Tennessee?
Yes.
Was that, yeah.
Yeah. And, with that, all the neighbors loved her. And I voted to approve it.
Right.
But then there was one last night, and I explained this, that we voted 3-1 to approve it. I was against it, and I told the person, I said, I'm not voting against you or saying anything, but I said from the beginning, if the vast majority of responses that come in are against it, I'm going to do that, and that was my pledge. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get it. I'm just one of 5 people on the council.
Right.
And she goes, I understand what you're saying. Again, it's just explaining to people what your thought process is.
Isn't that, I mean, the whole communication is the essence of being able to explain things in a way that people will understand it. And then they can, at least they're informed, and they can either be happy or not so happy.
Right.
But the idea for all of us in all walks of life is if we don't communicate very well, it's not going to work very well.
Well, and if I could add one thing real quick, is that we actually we need more affordable housing for people to live in. Now, I'm not talking about for a weekend.
Yeah.
And my concern was some large corporation coming in and buying 100 homes and doing short term. That's taking away from, let's say that there's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath there.
Yeah.
And somebody who grew up here wanted to come back, and they're just starting their life, and they, got married and maybe have a child. And if we take those things out of the marketplace,
it's tough.
It makes it tough.
It does make it tough.
Especially when you look at what apartments go for around here.
No doubt. I mean, Waxahachie, it's fair to say that Waxahachie has a housing availability, pricing. I mean, it's all very tough. I would hate to be a 20-something starting my family and trying to find a place in Waxahachie. And STRs, I happen to be against them, not that really matters, but STRs, the more we have, the less available to those who want to make Waxahachie their home. A question on the central location. I mean, do those, to have an STR in that location, whatever that is, does that require an SUP as well? No. So because it's already been designated, they don't have to go through the process.
Right. Now, they still need to, and this is something that we found out when we were investigating this. And at the time this came up last year, we found out that there were about 70, 75 STRs operating here within the city of Waxahachie. And, but if you look at it, they really fall within the designated type of activity that need to be taxed, hotel-motel tax.
Yeah.
Nobody was doing it.
Right.
Now, Airbnb, Vrbo, they take the state portion, but we have a
city,
that you have to report in.
Right.
So, when you're looking at it, it's one of these things that it's that yeah, they were doing right, but they weren't doing exactly right.
Yeah, and so would you say to those out there that own STRs right now that at some point the taxes are going to have to be paid?
Yes.
Did somebody refer to those taxes as homo taxes last night or something goofy?
I think they just said hot tax.
Hot tax.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought somebody said it. Not that there's anything wrong. HOMO. I mean, I could see where people would come up with that, but I thought I heard that for the first time last night. I thought that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the at some point the taxes are going to have to be paid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Anything else you want to say on STRs?
Yeah. So just to make it clear,
Yeah.
I just want it to be responsible and work with your neighbors to garner support.
Yeah.
We have the ordinance passed where you're limited on the number of people, the number of cars, where the cars can be placed. They can't be on the street.
Yeah.
You have to have cameras that are working, that are recording, so the people can see people going in and out. And also you have to have a representative that's within, I think, 20 miles that can respond to any emergency.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to get the SUP is really not that hard.
Yeah, right. Is the issue at the lake still an issue at the lake, or is that pretty much calmed down?
So that house, the person that was operating it ceased operating it, and it's for sale right now.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Good. I want to jump back and ask you something else about the city overall. How well do you think the city operates right now on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best ever and 1 being the worst ever? Mm-hmm. Where would you rank right now?
I would honestly, and there'd be people that'll dispute it, but this is Pat Souter's opinion.
Yeah, that's all.
I think that we're probably a 7 to 8.
And do you? How would you rank the staff in the aggregate? Just as you answered it kind of the same. I mean, it's the same kind of question.
Yeah,
right?
but I would go closer to an 8 on it. We have a tremendous staff.
Yeah.
From our department heads all the way down to, the folks that are out there on the streets taking care of things, or those that are answering the phones, or, when you go in to pay your water bill or whatever. Mm-hmm. I've been so impressed with the staff across the board. And when I ask for somebody will email and say, hey, could you find out about this? I reach out and I get an answer, and I get a complete answer back.
Yeah, right.
So there's always room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Turnaround time on a building permit can be better.
Yeah.
Or, getting somebody to, for example, last night you had some folks out at the lake that were, with all this rain, all this wood and shrubs and everything.
Yeah.
And we could have done better on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody acknowledged that.
Yeah.
But you can always improve. If you're not trying to improve, you can't improve.
That's right. You're not going to improve. So it's not really an elephant in the room per se, but part of the discussions that I've had with most every council person, including Mr. Atkins, has been this, and I don't like dealing in rumors, but this rumor has troubled me, and so I've been apt to discuss it with people, and that is the desire to make sure that Michael Scott, city manager, stays city manager, and that there has been some, and I don't know where this, excuse my expression, but crap comes from, but the idea that anyone would run for council, whether it's now or the past or in the future, for the sole purpose of getting rid of someone is not a council person I would want on council. With respect to both the rumor and your personal professional feelings about Michael and the job that he's done, let's start there. How would you describe that?
Michael has done everything that I've asked him to do as it relates to getting information or, making sure that something gets taken care of. I've heard the same rumors. A lot of those rumors are generated from people that aren't on council and have an axe to grind.
Yeah.
I have seen nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll go on the record of this. And you know me,
Yeah.
I'll talk,
Mhm,
and,
yeah.
I have an opinion. I would go on the record that I do not see any grounds to remove him.
Okay.
Yes, there's been people that maybe that work in a department that people don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they didn't get what they wanted to get. I mean, this isn't Waxahachie of 20 years ago.
Right.
So I think Michael does an excellent job.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't sometimes. There needs to be a recognition in our form of government that the city manager operates the city.
Right.
And so we're there to assist and to provide information and to act through funding or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Michael does a tremendous job.
Good. That's what I want to know. And are you familiar with the wafting of the rumor out there that maybe there's some talk that, you know, some people have some vendettas or whatever you want to call it, because really, with respect to the performance that Michael has provided, at least from our vantage point at the Sun, to overlook that and then to seek to have a change there, really, that's the definition of a vendetta as far as I'm concerned. But have you been aware of that? Okay. So,
yeah. And if I could add something, honestly, I think that, and this goes back to our department heads and the like, I think that if we lose Michael, we may lose some excellent
Other people,
that
yeah.
look around and say, well, if that happened to him,
mm-hmm.
is it going to happen to me?
Yeah, I there's some questions I want to ask you that are popping up. I just want to say to our viewers, as I've said before, it can't always be said that Waxahachie's had the best of city managers. Matter of fact, I think maybe before you were back in Waxahachie, we had made a change. The city had made a change.
That's right about that time.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, and the person that ran it before was a great guy, but there needed to be a change at that point in time. And that change resulted in Michael taking over city manager from the assistant city manager role. And Michael, as far as I'm concerned, in an objective sense, has done an excellent job, as you've said. And so I would say to sitting city council that we need to be very intuitive about when we start, if people are looking to tinker with management, that we need to think about what you just said, and that is the rippling effect and what will happen not only to the staff, what will happen to how developers and retailers and those looking to come to Waxahachie. Is it a city in uproar? Is it a city in dysfunction? That sort of thing. And we don't need to snatch victory, or is it the opposite of what they always say? Snatch
victory from the jaws of defeat.
Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I do, you know, in our discussion with Mr. Atkins, he committed to giving everyone a clean slate, which is the appropriate response. I think any new council member deserves to be able to give, as a city council person, members of the city staff a clean slate. There might have been issues before. You know, I own businesses and have had issues with city councils and with the way certain cities are structured and how long it takes to get a permit and that sort of thing. But that kind of stuff cannot be carried over to city council, because that's a vendetta, and I think the greater good has to be focused on here.
Right, and this is just an example of Michael, and this happened within the past 6 weeks or so. Yeah. I sent him an email on a Saturday night because I was thinking of it. I didn't want to forget it.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
And I got a response back within an hour and a half.
Right.
And, you know, you don't expect that a lot from city managers. But, you know, I think that is not uncommon. I've done that before. I've done it when he's been on a trip. Right. I didn't know he was on a trip, and then I apologized. I'm so sorry. This is not important.
Yeah.
As it relates to building permits, and like I went to him, I had people contact me. Can you look into this? That there's a hold up here or there, and he came back with statistics as to the turnaround time from residential and commercial. Now, it wasn't great, but we also need more staff too. So there could be some problems there, and there's always, you know, you're in the newspaper game. You always have one opinion here and one opinion there, and it's usually something that's in the middle.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. Okay, thank you for that. Couple of comments here. Can Kevin Crouch says transparency and the willingness to be plugged in are two different things. I'm not sure exactly the context for saying that, but if you want to allude to that, Kevin, I'd appreciate it. JD says there are STRs currently operating that council voted against allowing. Who should we contact about those properties?
Contact me.
Contact Patrick Souter.
Yeah, and all my contact information is on the city website, because I will tell you that when we pass that ordinance, there is a timeline by which people are supposed to file their application.
Right.
Or if they've been denied, my take on it is, if they're not following the law, this is the son of a cop.
Yeah.
If you're not following the law, I want to know it. I'm going to go to the city and say, okay, that they're operating against the ordinance.
Yeah. Okay. So there's your answer, JD. And I would just ask if you would to copy the son on that, so that we can also help. But I think contacting Patrick will certainly get you what you're looking for here. Sarhuzar says, why not work on each STR on a case-by-case basis? I think that's what you guys have set up.
Yeah, that's
right?
exactly what we've set up. One versus, you could have 5 on a block next to each other, and all of them are reviewed separately.
Right.
So it's not like when we say, well, there were 4 on it. Well, there were 4 because we had 4 applications to review individually. So that's exactly what is being done.
Okay. All right. So last night, let me back up to a couple of weeks ago, and I got, you just said it. You'll get somebody that loves and somebody hates the same. They're looking at the same thing. 2 different. I'm fall into that. There may be people who like what I do, but there are people who despise what I do. So there's no really, you can't be consumed with trying to please both. So 2 or 3 weeks ago, you got a little spirited.
Yes.
At City Council. The issue had to do, and I'll set it up and then you can make sure to clarify. But the issue was a post on a by another City Council member on social media that you felt positioned the rest of you, or at least some of you, as being, I don't know what the word might be, but if you would do something or move along in whatever.
We were negligent in dealing with the issue at hand.
Yes. So, and you took issue with that.
Yes.
And you decided, and because you guys are restricted, I mean, you can talk one-on-one and well, you can't talk one-on-two because that constitutes
a quorum.
But you can't talk one-on-one.
Right.
But you wanted the discourse or the conversation, if you will, to happen at City Council. Which again, at the end of City Councils, everybody gets to, on the dais, gets to, say, I want to do this, or I want to say this, or I want to think this or think that. But you got a little spirited. So tell us about that, and what you can talk about the specific, if you'd like, or you can talk about what about it fired you up.
So I said in the public comments at the end of my very first council meeting that I would call out posts on social media. Social media can be a great thing. It can be a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And I said, I will call out things that are just factually incorrect. So I'd been made aware of, because I really don't do social media.
Yeah.
Because you can't have this discourse.
Right.
I mean, this conversation.
Yeah.
And I didn't name anybody. I just simply read the comment, which was categorically false. That put it in the light that there were certain council members that had no interest in handling the panhandling situation. Yeah. And I just made it clear that I was not that person. In fact, last year in a planning meeting, I brought it up and had mentioned how Dallas was handling their panhandling statute, where what they did is they approached it from a public safety standpoint, that if you're going to do it, the median has to be so wide. And the reason why they approached it that way is that, believe it or not, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly that panhandling if you prohibit it, it violates your First Amendment right of freedom of speech. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what we're dealing with.
Right.
So I brought up Dallas, and because Dallas had just passed this, and I thought it would be a great way, especially when you do look at something like on 77 where there are people out there, and it is dangerous.
Yeah, it's a I eyeball it. It's a 3 or 4 foot median at best.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, I've seen where people have had children out there.
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen where they've had dogs out there.
Yeah.
And so Dallas did it where you'd have to have at least 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I brought that up, and that was part of the record. And we got into a debate that it said that when reading it, well, that's not this council. That's not what it said. You're dealing with people are complaining about panhandling, and I hate it.
Yeah.
We can find a way. That's the reason why I brought up the Dallas solution. Now, Dallas is getting sued.
Yeah.
But I did not want it to look like I was not doing my job.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, well, that's past tense. And I said, well, past tense, yesterday's past tense. So if you said it yesterday, I mean, isn't it applicable now?
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you that me and the council member exchanged texts and talked about it, and we're good.
Yeah.
And it comes down to when you're reading something, people can read things different. But this was just a factual statement,
Mm-hmm.
and I did not name anybody.
Right.
There was a council person in the text,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not the person. So I didn't name anybody.
Right.
The discourse came, and that person revealed themselves
Yeah.
by saying, that's not what I said.
Yeah.
And I said, well, yeah, it is. And I look at things like a lawyer. I'm going to look at it, and if it says this, then
That's what it says.
yeah.
From my vantage point and those that I, in my sphere of the universe, I think appreciate the spirited discussions that happen. We talked about it earlier in a conversation. There's nothing wrong with having those kinds of conversations. Some people said, well, people shouldn't lose their temper. I always get a kick out of that because my guess is that if somebody said, well, you shouldn't have lost your temper, you might, like I have said in the past, well, if you want to see me lose my temper, it's far greater or bigger or uglier than what I just did. So, the losing tempers is a relative.
And see, and unfortunately, I'm trained as a lawyer, okay? And in making an argument, there are certain times that you start slowly and build up.
Yeah.
You can emphasize words. Think about it. And this prime example, you're watching Law and Order, and they're in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And you see how they do that. It's not that I'm losing my temper.
Yeah.
There's different ways that from law school and 33 years of practicing law that you make arguments.
Right.
And I was also being interrupted, so I spoke over the person.
Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, his heart's in the right place. Yeah. And we traded text, and at the end of the day, I said, we're good.
Yeah.
Let's just get together sometime.
I think that should not be understated or overlooked. That I don't mind saying Travis Smith was the other one, and the person that you were talking to, and I think both of you have your heart in the right place when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
And Travis is not a wallflower.
No.
Neither are you, and so there are going to be times when you clash, and that ought to be acceptable. If it's not, then we're far too rigid. Matter of fact, I think you'll agree with this, but disagreement on city council can be healthy.
No
and
doubt.
it's that old adage about if two people always agree, only one of them is needed. Well, if 4-5 people on council always agree on the same things, then only one of them is really needed.
Right.
So I think being able to watch two men who are self-confident and who voice their opinions and can get after it, but at the end of the day can have a discussion and come back together. That's what we want.
And Travis is passionate, and he truly wants what's in the best interest of the city. And, the crazy thing is we're both wanting the same thing.
Yeah, we don't want panhandling, right?
Right.
Yeah, so to that point, let me just back up and ask you, so on 77, which is almost always where I see panhandling.
Exactly.
It's not always in the median. You'll see him over there in front of the targets sometimes. They're not really on 77 in the Target area or the Lowe's. They're more into those trees in the parking areas.
Right.
But short of that, I don't see a lot of panhandling in Waxahachie. It's primarily on, at least what I see, on 77. Is that accurate that most of it's happening? And so, where do we stand now, and what do you anticipate happening?
So right now we do have a panhandling statute, but unfortunately we can't enforce it.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that that I think all on council are frustrated with. We do not want that out there, whether it's an appearance sake, whether it's a public safety, issue, whatever.
Right.
We don't want it.
Right.
But we're handcuffed. And I thought that Dallas, and that's the reason why a year ago I thought Dallas was very creative, because that by doing public safety approach, you all have your own civil liberties, but they're not absolute.
Yeah.
The old adage, you can't yell fire in a
Right.
crowded theater. You have the right for freedom of speech,
Yeah.
but you can't do it in such a way to harm somebody.
Sure.
That's the reason why I thought Dallas was very creative on the public safety issue, and that's going to go through the courts, and it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that we're just going to have to wait for the
holding pattern.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to disparage anybody that panhandles. I really don't. Matter of fact, my son, who's in the room, will tell you that I can't help it, but to give something sometimes, and particularly when I see, if you got a dog involved, chances are we're going to pay close attention.
right.
But when I see those men and sometimes I guess they're women in those white suits with the deflector things, I don't know what those people are doing or who they are, but they don't need to be hanging out in that little tiny median
Right.
on 77. And there are some
Or running out when the light
Yeah.
changes, running
Yeah,
out
running out
into
there.
the street and going between people.
they don't get their butts run over.
Yeah.
And but then the other side of me says these are people, not those people, but the other ones that I see, they're there for a reason. Sometimes it's not a great reason, but who am I to judge?
Right.
I always, I got a little plumpness on me, and when I see a plump, what do you call it? We just said it, panhandler. I'm thinking that ain't adding up, and so I always get a kick out of that. But I appreciate you guys looking into it, and I know it's wise to let Dallas see what happens with Dallas, so you'll have a better sense of what's going on. All right, let's talk about last night. So last night was 2 hours long, and the one advantage you have if you watch it online is that you can speed through. I think Jennifer on city staff and Sean, they do a great job.
Excellent
Jennifer
job.
is excellent at what she does, but she would probably laugh if she heard this, but you can glaze over when you're listening to all that stuff because it's a full presentation. And so sometimes I want to get to the part where if I understand what's going on, I want to see what how y'all voted.
And I do. Now that you brought up Jennifer, this is another example of our staff. I'd had people sending me Saturday morning their oppositions to. Friday and Saturday sent me oppositions to what we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
And so I told Jennifer, I'm getting these and I'm going to send them to you because it was too late to be in the agenda package.
Yeah.
They have to have it by Friday morning. Within 15 minutes, Jennifer responded on a Saturday morning saying, thank you.
Yeah.
And then acknowledged what I was sending over.
Yeah, I mean those aren't little things to get a response like that.
Right.
I mean, I've often said to my staff and others, a lot can be said about you in not how you respond necessarily. Well, how you respond will say a lot about you, but that you responded and when did you respond? And Lord knows I have, from time to time, will take too long. But the idea of responding to somebody, or to have a city staff person or a city manager respond to you at what you know are probably not the best times for them to have to do it, or you may not know that they're vacationing somewhere, but that they respond says a lot about who they are.
And I wasn't expecting her to respond. I was just sitting it over because when she would come in Monday morning, turn on the computer, and there it would
was.
be. So.
Yeah, right. So let's talk about that issue. We got about 15 more minutes.
Okay.
I want to close it with a couple other things. But that issue, I'm going to let you run with it. But it's from a basic sense, it's a retail business or a bakery in this case.
Bakery.
Opening a bakery in and I don't know if it's currently zoned for historic or what, but tell us what that issue is and how you feel about it.
Okay, so the building in question is on West Jefferson Street, adjacent to the women's building.
Yes.
Okay, that is the start of a nationally recognized historic district, the West End Historic District, nationally recognized.
Okay.
The building that was in question has been residential for years. It's been zone residential for years. So you had this idea, or the landowner wanted to convert it over to a bakery. Very lovely lady, and I mean, everybody you talk to talks about how great her food is.
Yeah.
But they were wanting to put it in that building, and there's limited parking space. There's a driveway that goes to the back that only is wide enough for one car, and they were going to pave the back of it, and I think 4 more spots back there. They were going to remove 2 windows and a door, and change the structure to accommodate another entrance.
Okay.
So you had this situation of a 100-year-old building.
So let me stop here. If I'm looking at the women's building,
Yes.
where you go in to vote,
So
where is to the
around on the Jefferson Street side? So
Okay.
if you're looking at the women's building,
Okay.
Jefferson Street is the right hand,
Okay.
and so it is actually the first residence that is on the back side.
On the same side, right directly behind the
Yeah.
women's. Yeah. So Jefferson's where there's a vacuum place
Vacuum
right there.
cleaner place. There's
Yeah.
an STR that we just the person that owns the STR has a house next to it. We just approved
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Got it.
But what was going to be done was encroaching into a nationally recognized historic district, and it was going to be materially changing a building that's 100+ years old.
Yeah.
And so many people who have come down or who have moved to Waxahachie have come from Dallas and recognized what happened to Bishop Arts, where you had this historic area that now if you go there, it's
Yeah.
a free-for-all.
Right.
Old East Dallas, where you have the same thing, where you had this encroaching into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I was so proud, as I mentioned to him last night, I was so proud of the people that came out. If they couldn't come out, they sent letters or they did both.
Yeah.
In opposition of it, that we do not want to destroy any historical building. It's not like George Washington slept there or anything, but it's part of our history.
Yeah. Well, it's a slippery slope too. If you're
Right.
not careful.
And so, as you know, I'm again part of Historic Waxahachie. I'm council liaison for heritage preservation. A lot of those folks reached out to me, and I said, I'll pick up the gauntlet and run with it.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why I mentioned that I was sending things to Jennifer, just saying I've got these, and I'm just forwarding them on, so so there'll be an official public record. So that was the concern was from those. But not only is dealing, it was a bigger issue than one house. It was the first step into going down West Jefferson.
Yeah. The slippery slope of where do you stop?
Right. And then I had folks that had told me that lived there that because what came up in P&Z, no, you can't say that's going to happen. Well, who knows? We can't say anything's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I thought it was rather interesting that a lot of folks on Jefferson going towards Hawkins, folks had come to see if they would start selling their houses.
Yeah.
Okay, well, why would they be doing that if they
Right.
thought that slippery slope might get a lot slipperier?
Yeah. So last night you guys voted.
Yes.
But I want to make sure I recall right, because there was there was an attempt to move that,
Correct.
to delay it, or whatever y'all call it.
Yeah, we would pass on it to another meeting.
And to Travis's credit, I think, and others may have said the same thing, but I remember Travis saying, "No, we got to back up here and do this again." In essence, you guys voted on not moving it back, but the actual issue. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because it came up that this is a reason why we want to, or not we, but the person who petitioned wanted to move it back.
Yeah.
And all of us were kind of looking down the line, and go, no, we're going to settle this now.
Oh, that was good.
So, and we gave them an opportunity to put on the same presentation
Right.
that would have been done. Did not limit. In fact, had probably more time than what he had at planning and zoning to not only present but answer questions and address things that came up in planning and zoning. So just because we didn't pass on it, they were not limited as to their rights to be able to go before
you didn't
council.
say we're not going to delay it, and you got 5 minutes to share it with us.
Exactly.
Did P&Z approve it?
P&Z approved it.
What was the vote? Do you remember?
It was one. I think there's 6. I think it was 6-1 for.
Interesting.
Yeah. But there was also some confusion because the comprehensive plan came up in P&Z, and that you wanted to have a walkability and that. So P&Z really looks at it differently, and I've tried to explain this to the folks that did not like P&Z's. P&Z is to look at it under a different microscope than we are, and can it actually happen within it? I didn't disagree. I disagreed with it. I thought they mischaracterized. Some folks mischaracterized the comprehensive plan. And if you watched it, there was a point last night where they had read from the comprehensive plan.
You left this part out.
Yeah,
right?
It's a rule of evidence called the rule of optional completeness, that you have the right to address it.
Yeah.
And it said, oh, yeah, well, you're going to be able to do this. And it said, but above it, that they did not say was that this is not an ideal way to go into a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
And, that again, that's where prepping for meetings and the like.
Yeah. It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys did the right thing, so I appreciate that. Let me see a couple other things here. Ellis County Museum, good job, Patrick. Yes. Allison Bell, appreciate the many times Mr. Souter has been able to use his skills for research and preparing for a meeting, and then applying the experience and approach of an informed and well-prepared litigator during council to the benefit of the city and residents. That's very nice.
Oh, that's very nice.
Debbie
Thank you.
Borders says, well, they let the First Baptist Church get demolished. They didn't preserve it. Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah. So one, the first, that part that was torn down. So county purchased part of it,
Right.
and the other part that was remaining was torn down, and they did try to recapture some of the things like stained glass and everything.
Yeah.
That building was full of asbestos.
Yeah.
There would be no way to use, and I wish there could have been, but we do not have in the city, and this is something that actually I'm going to look into because it came up through this process. We do not have a process in the city where we can delay a destruction of a historic or any type of building.
Well,
So I know where Amy's going with that. We didn't have a way to do it, and nobody was going to come in there and try to convert that into something, but she's right. I think that we need to have the right to be able to do that, and that's going to take action.
Is that I'm almost certain, but I'll let you answer it because I could be wrong, obviously. But is that building, or was that building certified, or whatever word you guys use, to as a historic property? I was told that it wasn't.
It was,
but it was?
No, it
wasn't. Okay.
It was outside the historic overlay.
Right. Okay.
We could look at it and say, yeah, based upon it, and I hated to see it come down.
Yeah.
But that's the reason why I'm glad Amy brought it up because
Debbie brought it up.
Oh,
Debbie
okay.
Boyd. That's all. You're thinking Amy Borders.
Oh, I thought you said Amy.
No,
well,
Debbie
I'm
Borders
sorry.
Wilson.
Okay, but no, I think that we need to have that to be able to protect Really, so for example, let's say then that they want to go in there in the West Jefferson house and tear it down now.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way that we at the city can do anything. I think that we need to do it, and we have strong enough historical groups here that I think that would be in favor of it, and I plan to work with them on it.
Good.
But that's really something that's the First Baptist was the thing that it tore our hearts out.
Yeah, we we can see it almost right out our windows at the sun, and it was tough to watch it come down. But there are certain things that there's only so much the city can do. I when people talk about putting up a traffic light or changing a stop sign,
right,
or doing this or doing that to a road that TxDOT has oversight of, there's just not anything. I mean, you guys can talk with TxDOT, but you don't have any final say over that. TxDOT decides that, right?
Right.
I mean,
well, okay. So I could give you a prime example.
Yeah.
And justice sometimes moves very slow.
Yeah.
You're exiting off of 287 onto the service road to get to 77 there by the Mexican food restaurant.
Yeah.
And you see people all the time. There were yield signs, and people just go right through.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
So I came up with the idea because south of town, where you have the entrance or the exit off of 35 onto 77, you have a flashing yield sign. It took an act of Congress for me to get that flashing yield sign. And because TxDOT said, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. City, y'all go do it, even though that's not our road.
Right.
And then by the time we got the parts ordered and everything, it was like a 6 to 8 week process.
Yeah.
But something as simple as that. And then, last night coming home from council meeting, I looked there and somebody ran right through it. So
that is a good. I mean, we don't want to get caught up in that, but that's a wild and woolly exit off of 287,
right.
And because people, I assume everybody believes they have the right of way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. All right, we're gonna close up here. I want to read one more comment. A big thank you to Mr. Souter and the rest of council protecting the history of the integrity of the Jefferson home, and for maintaining the residential zoning to protect the homes of the immediate concerned neighbors, along with neighbors further down who have valid fears that commercial creep, that's another good way of saying slippery slope, will move on down to impact them. So I think that's a really good statement. And I'm grateful that you guys are keeping your eye on that.
Yeah, and I said it was unanimous.
Yeah.
And so Travis started at one end, and it came down to me, and that's where I was like, okay, now I start rubbing my hands together, saying, okay, here we go.
Yeah, it was that was a really good example of a great way of council working together.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's, in closing here, next, as I mentioned earlier in the show, on Tuesday, the council makeup it has to shift because Mayor Hill is
Correct.
no longer on the council. Is there anything you want to say about that? Any concerns you have? Anything you want to share with the viewers about that?
Yeah. One thing, nobody could ever accuse Mayor Hill of not giving 110%. He treated that job like a full-time job.
Yes, he did.
And I make no bones about it between Kevin Strength and David Hill, that they have made themselves available and have been a mentor and a friend. And I've told them early on, I say, you see me getting out of line, or if I'm not considering something,
right, then
I want you to tell me. And Kevin actually said, and David did the same thing, he said, never go into a council meeting being 100% sure of the way you're going to vote, because there could be that little old lady that comes up. It's okay to be 95%, but be open to what is said. Right. I know that David will still always be there to provide me guidance. As it relates to the council, I hope and pray that what we did last night can carry forward. And I'm going to be positive in that, and I'm going to be open to it. I hope that there's not hidden agendas out there that I'm not aware of, but I'm going to be the same person.
Good.
And I do think that we have the makeup of what can be a great, not good, but great council.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to work together.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. When I sat down with Trace Atkins, I did say, should you win, and should there be any feeling in you that wants to make a change at the city manager position, which again, he told me that there would be a clean slate. I said, you really ought to stop to think about how if instead of having anyone that has preconceived notions about wanting to do something like that, is to say, well, wait, what if we sat down, the two of us, in that case, him and the manager, or any person that rumor might have been attached to, in Trace's case, to sit down with Michael and say, how can we be really dynamic together, as opposed to having any of these little thorns causing friction. And I do think that and I have to learn this lesson, we
all do.
And sometimes I say, I've opposed this person, or I've not, this person doesn't opposes me, or whatever. What if we sat down and came to some kind of, not agreement, because there's some things that just, I'm not going to change my opinion and they may not change theirs, but if we can put our heads together and agree to work together, we might accomplish far more than we ever dreamt we could. Mm-hmm. And so I think Michael is the type of person that this council needs to, with the change, with the makeup of council, needs to sit down and say, let's really engage and work hard like you guys do now with Michael, because he is a good city manager. Why don't we all do that? Mm-hmm. And let's get rid of these silly, stupid little things that hold us back and keep us, more of a rub than integrated. Yeah.
Right. And I think if you look at it, we do have council members that truly do care about the city, and they have their heart in it. And we've mentioned Travis and I have had our blow-ups that they're on video. But at the same time, there's been certain things that Travis has brought to me and said, what do you think about this area? What's your thoughts? Not that we're planning or plotting or anything. It's just like, do we whatever the thing would be. And I think that we do have the platform, and everybody, I think, we have a clean slate. And with Trace coming aboard, he, fifth generation Waxahachie family. Yeah. He has a heart for it. Mm-hmm. We just need to put Waxahachie out first and develop our thought processes as to what needs to happen.
Yeah, it's always about the greater good. And I can tell you, as kind of a watchdog newspaper company, that we're always on the look for those who can't see the greater good because they're more concerned about themselves or about some vendetta. Right. It's about the greater good. And the minute we lose that, we're going to start fracturing. And when that happens, we'll introduce Waxahachie will be introduced to what we see happening in the rest of the country. So before we close, thank you for being here.
First my pleasure.
We're
Anytime.
Going to have you back. Yeah,
I'd love it.
By these comments and these questions and the number of people watching, definitely want to have you back. So we'll plan on that. Click on the link in the chat room to apply for Thursday's giveaway. Want to make sure you all do that. It's called what King Sumo, right? King Sumo. How's that for a name of a URL that you need to go to have a chance to win? So we're giving away 6 tickets to Scarborough Fair, and that are good for the rest of the time that the fair, festival, whatever you want to call it, is in play. So do that. We will be back, or I will be back on Thursday. I'm going to dedicate Thursday's show to talking about Mayor Hill and all he's done for the community. I want to talk about some of the things that happened in this election cycle that I think were unnecessary. I want to talk about what it means to really, as Patrick has so well said and exemplifies, what it means to be committed to the city in which you live, and that you don't treat it as some novelty idea to sit on council, but that it is a commitment. So I want to talk a little bit about that. We'll be about 30 or 45 minutes on Thursday, and I'll begin to share more with you on the new ideas that we have coming for mid-June. So remember, be a beast for good. Patrick Souter, city council person. If you need something, like some folks did here, can always reach out to Patrick. I know based on experience that he'll respond to you and be attentive. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I will see you all on Thursday. Be a beast for good. So long. Give me the sign when we're off.